if you're number 42 on the roster and she wants to have a family and you're looking for mother stock sort of thing, if things aren't going well in that relationship, and again, you're number 42, what stops her from going on to number 43? Because she's already done it 42 other times. There's no stickiness to that relationship. And we saw the results of this in a study. It's called the Teachman study. Basically, they stopped collecting the data. I think it was after about a dozen or 14 people. And women's ability to pair bond is significantly compromised with every guy that she's with. So you have a higher probability or a higher chance of a successful marriage or a long-term relationship the fewer guys that she's been with. The more guys that she's been with, it just goes down the scale until it goes down in the toilet. So it's like there is no impunity. There are consequences to choices. So you should be discerning in your choices in life. And I recommend that for both men and women.
Now, today's show is brought to you by Myoscience Nutrition, a formula that I put together to help men and their partners have better satisfaction in relationships as well as performance in the gym. Is called Morning Wood. What makes this product unique is it's the only formulation on the market that features bovine testicular extract, which I'll explain in a minute, ashwagandha, the KSM-65, along with zinc and magnesium. ZMA, zinc and magnesium, have been used for a very long time. Actually, my alma mater, Western Washington University, did one of the first studies to find that zinc and magnesium can help support testosterone as well as strength and performance. Now, glandular therapy has been used for a very long time. Anyone that sees a medical professional for thyroid issues is often prescribed bovine or porcine thyroid extract, because when you take glands from another animal, for example, a pig or a cow, it helps support your own glands. And that thinking also works when it comes to optimizing hormonal levels in men. And that's why the Morning Wood features over 1,000 milligrams of bovine testicular extract, along with the herb ashwagandha and the minerals zinc and magnesium. There's many reviews over at Myoscience from people who are finding benefit, including increased energy, focus, and better performance in the bedroom. You can save by using the code podcast over at myoscience.com. That's MYOXCIENCE.com. So let's cut back to it with Rich and talk all about how to navigate this very complicated dating landscape. Well, Rich, it's great to have you on the show. I've been consuming a lot of your content over the past 2.5 years, and I love the information that you're sharing and tips that you're sharing, both for men in relationships and men that are back on the dating scene, whether it's post-divorce or what have you. I'm sure you've shared your story in numerous videos, and you have a great book called The Unplugged Alpha that I would highly recommend everyone consume. In brief, Rich, how did you get into this space where you're helping men better understand the dating landscape and navigating relationships?
Yeah, and thanks for having me, Mike. And I appreciate you, bringing me on and endorsing the book. I was an entrepreneur for a number of years, for several decades. I was actually in the credit card debt relief space, and it's kind of one of those things where you have to make your wounds your work. And I had some bad results out of life, and I always blame myself if I get bad results. I look in the mirror and I take ownership for it. So I had to try to figure out what was going on, and I sort of went down this rabbit hole after my divorce. And I had a bad relationship with a gal, and I saw what the government does with legislation when they pass new bills, and I kind of sort of red pilled myself. And as a result of that, I also had a YouTube channel at the time, which is still called Entrepreneurs in Cars, and I mostly make videos in the car, just talking about tips and advice to help guys sort of like level up in life. I sort of pivoted away from interviewing entrepreneurs and their success rides because people in the comments were asking questions like, because I'd say, what kind of video would you like to see? And I'd get something like, you should do a video on the kind of women not to date. And I was like, okay, well, fortunately, I have some experience in that, so why don't I make my wounds my work? And I started telling stories about that, and it really seemed to resonate and help people. And, almost 10 years later, I'm still doing it.
Amazing. Yeah, and it's a very tricky landscape for men right now. I want to get into, challenges that men suffer from, and couples really in long-term relationships with changes in libido and sex drive and things like that. But for single men, it's a very a tricky landscape, I think, for a lot of different reasons. Perceived optionality, especially for women. Maybe we can start with this because, if you and I were to get on a dating app, we might get 3 or 4 hits in a day, but women who are moderately attractive will get 40 or 50 hits a day. And so I think this perception of optionality, especially among women, prevents them from possibly becoming emotionally invested in a man and things like that. What do you think is going on with this? How dating apps have changed the landscape?
Smartphones have changed the landscape entirely. If you want to sort of point to the origin source, I think it's the iPhone. That keypadless phone that integrated apps, and they started building all these social media platforms and dating platforms and all these sorts of things. And I think one of the areas that exists today that didn't in our parents or grandparents' generation is that women have a lot more options. They also tend to have a somewhat overinflated sense of worth too, because of the number of options they have. So, you go back to our parents' generation, they would date within their social circle, maybe a church, the school they went to, perhaps a work event, a wedding, something like that. They might get exposure to the opposite sex. But today, all women have to do is have a decent social media following on Instagram, be reasonably attractive, post provocative photographs, and they'll have tens of thousands of follows. And their posts are always like the hits they get from the posts that they make. It's funny because we had this guy that came to Toronto once that gave a talk at our entrepreneurs group. Can't remember his first name, but it was something Sexton, and he was talking about how boys and girls use social media differently. Boys will use their phones to take photographs of things outside, their cars, stuff like that. Women will use phones as selfie mode, take pictures of themselves, and the more provocative the photographs are, the more hits they can get on the likes, the comments. Girl, you're beautiful. Babe, you're a queen. I'd love to marry you. And of course, they slide in the DMs. And I think one of the things that happens as a result of that is women have this sense of entitlement, because you see these sit down podcast studios now. You've probably seen some of them where they're like dating podcasts, and you see relatively, decent looking women, but they have this opinion of this vast army of tall, jacked, six pack abs, 600 horsepower cars, 6 months out of a relationship, six-figure income guys that are all out there, waiting to wife them up. And by the way, ignore their promiscuous past. Women today have been told as a function through toxic feminism that they can be promiscuous with impunity, which isn't true. A man's judged on his success. A woman is judged on her sexual past, unfortunately for them. And preserving that's really, really important. So it's a whole cocktail of different ingredients that get blended up into a shake, and you pour it out, and it's really nothing more than a crap shake, if we're being honest about it.
It's wild. The promiscuity issue, I think, is really interesting because I believe that hormonal birth control plays a huge role into that, because most women would not have casual sex with the men that they are having casual sex with if there was a chance that they would get pregnant, because most of these men they might be attractive or good looking or have a little bravado in a nightclub, but this is not someone that they would generally want to have children with. So what role do you think that plays into the promiscuity?
Well, it adds to the promiscuity without any sort of consequences, because you can have sex without pregnancy. And in the past, having sex, there was always a consequence of pregnancy, which pays a higher toll for women than it does for men. They have to deal with the pregnancy for 9 months, and they have to birth the child and raise it and nurture it, sort of thing. Whereas men didn't necessarily have to do that. That's why men's sexual strategy is generally scatter seed far and wide, and women's is generally find the best provisioning male that they can get and lock that guy down. So now they have the opportunity to entertain options, which fundamentally fuels the hypergamous nature of women, because they want to date across and up on the socioeconomic scale, because they want the best that they can get. Because if they don't, it would have spelled certain death for them or their children, 1,000 years ago. So it's ingrained in their DNA to look for the best that they can get. So if they always have options, if the best they can get is maybe the next swipe away, then you can see why we have the problems that we have in the sexual marketplace, where a lot of guys complain that they're not getting the results they want, and women complain that they're not getting the top shelf guys that they expect, because they've got a lot of guys that they don't want, giving them a lot of free attention and validation, but they don't want those guys. They want the guys on the very top shelf that have many more options, who are entertaining all the six, sevens, eights, and nines, whereas the six, sevens, eights, and nines all want the tens, and there's a very few amount of those guys.
It's super interesting. And I think this conversation is very poignant for younger women, but I think there's something that shifts when women hit mid to late 30s and they start being
Oh
a
yeah.
little bit less picky. I mean, I think the younger women, at least in my experience that I've gone on dates with and dated and so forth, have this criteria of, like you said, over 6 feet tall, must make 250 to $300,000 a year, have a nice house, no baby mama. I mean, the list goes on. But as
Mm.
women get a little bit older, there's almost a sense of, I don't want to say desperation, but they realize that they have been maybe a little bit too picky. And oftentimes I see women settling because they want to have children and they realize that men of their age bracket are actually dating lower. So, speaking to women specifically to avoid those pitfalls, what advice would you say to them?
The advice that I dispense is never accepted, unfortunately. There's two peaks that men and women hit. Or sorry, men and women hit peaks, but at different stages of their lives, and women hit two peaks, unfortunately. So men usually peak in their mid to late 30s. That's when they're still handsome, they still have the youthful looks, they're not wrinkled, they're not grayed. They're generally at the peak or approaching the peak of their profession and their earning opportunities. That's usually when they're the most valuable to women. Women, on the other hand, are generally most valuable to men in their very early 20s, 22, 23 or so. And this really angers women immensely because they'll argue, oh, that's not true. Look at me. I've got my house, my degrees, my Tesla. And what they're basically describing is a man. They're describing the things that make men attractive. And because they've been told to chase excellence, climb the corporate ladder, put off having a family, get degrees, make money, again, buy the house and the Tesla, all that sort of thing. They're basically doing things that are making them terrible versions of men. Because there's no guy in history that's ever looked at a woman's degree on the wall framed in mahogany and said, "Oh yeah, look at the degree on her. That's real hot." Women are beauty objects to men, and this is confirmed widely, cross culturally, cross continent. It's been studied in depth and agreed by everybody in Evo Psych that if you ask men from around the world and you show them pictures of women in their early 20s all the way up to 70, universally, it doesn't matter where they're from, they almost all select 22, 23. So that's when women peak. But they have to come to the realization that that's real, and they don't. You tell women that today in their 20s, or even if she's 30, for example, she'll get mad at you. She'll call you a misogynist. Who hurt you? You have a little pee. You're bald, standard sort of stuff that I've heard 1,000 times. But they hit what's called the wall at that phase, which, by the way, isn't a term that I coined. It's a term that women coined, that they stole from sports, because they would say an athlete had hit the wall when he couldn't use his arm for pitching anymore, and they'll use it to sort of disqualify their competition, like other younger, more beautiful women. So women start to lose their value around 23. The problem is that they don't come to the realization or the acknowledgement that that exists until they're forced to, when they realize later on in life they're not getting the results that they want, when they realize that men don't really care about their degrees or their careers or their boss babe attitudes. And what they're really looking for is a younger, fertile, prettier, more agreeable type of gal that will be a complement to their life rather than complicate it. So it's a very, very difficult conversation to have, because when you talk about these things, you get accused immediately of, spreading hate, which simply isn't true. It's just a statement of facts. And unfortunately, to some people, the facts sound like hate to people that hate the facts.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. But what I think from the female's perspective, they're saying there's not enough quality men out there. I mean, just to play
Mhm.
devil's advocate. So I would like to just kind of bounce that idea back and forth, because I think, and there is, I would say, a dearth of quality men. Most men, and I think it's because the high quality men have increasing optionality in the sexual
Mhm.
marketplace. So they don't really want to commit to any one woman, especially if there is baggage and things like that. So what
Yeah.
would you say to that argument?
They're usually saying that when they approach their 30s and they realize that they've gotten out of school, they've got their job, they're making good money, they're able to do their girls' trips with their girlfriends, travel, they've got the car they want. They need a man like a fish needs a bicycle, sort of thing. And then they start to realize, well, I need a man for a family. Uh, and then they start looking for a good man that's also good at being a man to, become their husband and raise children with. And they're finding that the guys that they're dating are only entertaining them as options, because they have options, because they're older, they're more successful. They don't generally settle for just one woman if they're, top shelf guy, like a high value guy, a 10 out of 10 sort of guy. So they look around and they find these guys that don't want to commit to them, or they'll find guys that are out there that want to commit to them, but they're not attracted to because they're not at their level. So this is the problem that you end up with when you put women in the workforce, give them degrees, they climb the corporate ladder, they're making well into six figures and making very good money. Because again, like I said earlier, women are hypergamous. They date across and up on the social economic scale. So as they rise that scale and they become more successful and wealthy, they take a look around and they're like, look at me, I'm hot. My girlfriends say I'm hot. I've got a great life. I got my wine nights. My dog is well trained. Everything's great in my life. But why can't I find a guy? And it's like because most of the guys that you're looking at, you generally have options and they don't want to commit to you, or maybe you even passed up on them, several years ago while they were doing the work and you didn't want to, wait for them to get to that point, sort of thing. So there's a number. Again, this is a big puzzle with many, many pieces. So you can't really say it's this one piece that's the problem. But when women put it like prioritizing family, they age themselves out of the dating market. Their sexual market value starts to drop. Men know that women don't share their pot of gold with them. So we don't see success in women generally as attractive. We see beauty, curves, femininity, breast, hips, waist, ratio, long flowing hair, clear skin. We see those things as attractive and feminine cues that we're interested in. Women just don't get that they've basically turned themselves into men. They're trying to sell to men what it is that men are selling to women, and they don't understand that men aren't attracted to what is basically now the boss girl.
Very interesting. I think there is an overall imbalance in the masculine to feminine sort of perceptions or feelings in the landscape in the general population. I think it's really hard. My ex-wife was very masculine, and it was really hard to navigate the relationship with that because you had two masculine energies sort of going through life and focusing on careers and so forth. And so the imbalance was relatively skewed. And I think that is part of the problem in our culture. Life is so safe now. There's not really a need for a lot of women, for a protector, for a provider. They can make
Mhm.
their own money. They don't need protection because life is pretty safe, and we have security and Ring cameras and Nest and all these things. So I think that's part of it. But still, there's this yearning for a partner or for the family. So what do you think about the skewed masculine to feminine energies in our culture?
Yeah, women are more masculine than at any other time in history, and men are more feminine than any other time in history. I know your body of work pretty well. There's lots of things in society that are softening and weakening the Western male. I generally call it the pussification of the Western male because that's really what it boils down to. We've got men with much higher levels of estrogen than any other time in history. They've got much lower levels of testosterone. Um, they're certainly softer and weaker than they have ever been. So that because women want guys that look like they can get stuff done. They want guys that get it. They want guys that look masculine. And then they start to behave in a way that somewhat mimics the attitudes and behaviors of men. A lot of them are on birth control, so that throws off their hormones completely. Yeah, again, this is a large puzzle with many, many pieces, and it's difficult to say, this is the one or two or three pieces of their main culprit. There's a lot of moving things that are going on here, and I think that if we can return to a time where, and I don't think that we're going to get to it anytime soon, but if we can return to a time like in our grandparents' type of generation, that's really how human beings have been meant to operate. But we've moved fairly far away from that now, where I don't really see us returning to it anytime soon.
Yeah, it's wild. And what I love, what you review too, and I've seen these viral videos, is really progressive women complaining that they're single because they go out on dates with men who suggest they split the bill
Right.
or don't open the door for them. So on the one hand, they have these political ideologies and leanings that suggest that men and women are completely equal in all aspects and domains of life. Yet they also complain that these feminized or conditioned men don't open the door for them, don't plan dates, aren't being masculine. So
Yeah.
I think that's quite interesting, especially when you consider a lot of young men are now becoming more and more right leaning. I think you're seeing a bifurcation in political
Mhm.
ideologies, but that adds further insult, to to the dating landscape, especially for women who are looking for a feminized man yet, or a progressive man yet complain that he's not, participating in these traditionally masculine roles. So I think, I don't know, there was one viral video, I want to say it was about a year ago or 6 months ago. This woman was talking about how she's looking for a politically left leaning
Oh,
man, but
right.
then was also complaining about
Yeah, I've
that
seen it.
that to me is crazy.
Yeah, I've seen versions of that many times. I mean, you can have chivalry or you can have equality, but you can't have both. So if you want the guy to plan the dates, take you out on dates, pick you up, drop you off, pay for dinner, then he has to have some authority over that relationship, right? Like he's got to have some say. So one of the things that I've noticed that really upsets women is when you deal with a masculine man that has frame that wants to lead the relationship, he generally sets certain boundaries on the way that he's going to operate with her. So what I tell guys is choose women that choose you. So date multiple women simultaneously in a non-monogamous fashion. When they come to you and say, hey, where do we stand? Where's this going? I dig your vibe. I'd like to be serious with you. Like they want to claim you basically. Most guys at that point will take a look at her life and say, okay, well, cool. I like you too, but I can't take a woman seriously that takes girls' trips with her girlfriends to Vegas, Cancun, Ibiza, Greece, stuff like that. That's just not for me. And then they'll get upset. Oh, well, you're too controlling, or you're too insecure, or blah 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 sort of thing. Or you may say something like, I can't take a gal seriously that's posting provocative photographs on Instagram constantly, seeking the attention and validation of other men. You want to be serious with me? That has to stop. So are you going to delete your Instagram? Are you going to make it private and stop posting stuff like that? Because you're asking me, where do we stand? And they don't like that. They want, what they want is they want a compliant alpha male. They want a guy that's going to make equal decisions and choices with them. And when women say they want an equal partner, and by the way, I don't like the word partner. I prefer husband, wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend. Let's be clear about the gender that we're dealing with, when we're dating. But when they say they want an equal partner, what they want to do, generally speaking, is they want to make equal decisions in everything and be treated exactly the same, but they don't want to contribute to the financial part of making those decisions, which is why when the bill comes at dinner, they want you to pay, which is fine. I'll pay for the dinner, but I want authority over how the relationship's going to run. So if you're no longer single and you want to choose me, girls' trips and girls' weekends, they're done because I'm not going to expose a woman that I care about to the potential risk of stepping out on me in the relationship.
I love that. Maintaining the frame and, maintaining, I don't want to say dominance, but I feel that women generally, especially sexually, enjoy being dominant. And I feel like
Absolutely.
this is something that a lot of men struggle with, if they are maybe in a marriage or new to dating or haven't ever had a relationship. So how do you teach men to be more dominant and to learn the aspects of being dominant, especially sexually, that would cause women to desire you, to want to be exclusive with you?
There's a few areas. I mean, the ones that I covered in my book were around combat sports, doing things that are conventional male pursuits, like riding motorcycles, for example. These are things that women find attractive. Like women like a guy that is a weapon. They love a dangerous man that can speak softly but does carry a big stick. They love a guy that pursues activities and interesting hobbies that they can be invited into. A, a woman doesn't want to bring you into her frame. She wants to enter your frame at the end of the day. I had this very successful guy that I was coaching for a while. He was in his 60s, sold a bunch of businesses, had a lot of money, and he was boring women to death. He didn't understand that women, uh, you can do anything to a woman except for bore her. And he wasn't that interesting or captivating on the dates. And I was talking to him about his hobbies and his interests, and he had this thing about overlanding, which I'm new to. So apparently, you get these Jeeps or these 4x4s, you put tents on the roof, and you go deep into a desert or something like that. And he likes doing this with his buddies. And I said to him, I go, so what sort of dates are you normally doing? He's like, oh, a drink or dinner or something like that, but it never really goes anywhere. I said, next date, invite a gal that you like out for an overlanding adventure. Just tell her to pack a picnic. So you're going to give her some instructions to do something. Like this is what a man that leads will do. He'll say, pack a picnic, bring a bottle of whatever or something like that. I'll take care of, packing the truck. And it turned out to be a great day for him. It turned out to be an overnight thing. He brought this girl to a place that she'd never seen before to see a sunset. The stars come out because there's no light pollution, and they spent the night there together, and they had a great time. So the creativity aspect of dating needs to be understood by men because you have to be captivating. Like you can do anything, again, you can do anything to a woman except for bore her. She wants excitement, right? Her life is boring as it is already right now. She wants you to excite her. That's why guys generally, I mean, the smart guys anyway, will invite them on. Let's go for a supercar rally. Let's go on my boat for the day. Let's go on an overlanding adventure into the desert, sort of thing like that. Yeah, you have to do something that's fun for them.
I think that's really important. I can't tell you, Rich, how many dates that I went on where men wouldn't even plan a date. They would go
Oh
back
yeah.
and forth in the app, and
Where do you
I
want to
would,
go? I don't know. What time do you want to meet? I don't know.
wild.
When I go on a date, it's that black dress in picture number three. Wear that. I'm going to pick you up at 8, and we're going here.
Yeah.
Done. They're very happy with that. That's what they want.
Well, and what's interesting about that is even progressive women would like that assertiveness. I mean, that's what I think is pretty
They
fascinating.
do. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really interesting. And going back to the promiscuity, I think, there's all sorts of different theories here, especially for I think promiscuity for both men and women can be challenging when it comes to satisfaction in a long-term relationship. But I think it's more biased towards women. I think
Yeah.
we would both agree with that. But I think the challenge here is when women have experienced 30, 50, 40, 100 men, it's hard for them to be in a satisfactory relationship with one guy. Maybe he is dominant, assertive, he's 6 foot tall, makes money and all that. But there's been so many different sexual experiences that the odds that individual will be the best she's ever had becomes infinitesimally small. So what tips you offer for men to make sure that the gal that they're dating is getting the best intimacy that she's ever had?
Well, you got to be skilled in the bedroom. So let's say that we're not going to talk about that on this podcast because
Right.
I'm assuming this is going on YouTube, but that's something that, your audience should be able to figure out by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to certainly deliver that as a phenomenal experience for her. Um, the thing with the whole promiscuity stuff is that it comes with baggage, regardless of what they're going to tell you. There's going to be more. He hurt me. He cheated on me. He pushed me. He punched me. He threw me down the stairs. He said this to my sister. He said this to my mom. He showed up late. Whatever it happens to be. And they don't really seem to deal with it. So if it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, it's like if you're number 42 on the roster and she wants to have a family and you're looking for mother stock sort of thing, because that's probably the best way to define it for guys. If things aren't going well in that relationship, and again, you're number 42, what stops her from going on to number 43? Because she's already done it 42 other times. There's no stickiness to that relationship. And we saw the results of this in a study. It's called the Teachman study. Your audience can go look it up. But basically, they stopped collecting the data. I think it was after about a dozen or 14 people. And women's ability to pair bond is significantly compromised with every guy that she's with. So you have a higher probability or a higher chance of a successful marriage or a long-term relationship the fewer guys that she's been with. The more guys that she's been with, it just goes down the scale until it goes down in the toilet. So it's like, you know, uh, there is no impunity. There are consequences to choices. So you should be discerning in your choices in life, and I recommend that for both men and women.
Yeah, I think that's really important advice for a lot of men. But the challenge here is women have been conditioned culturally that, oh, it's just sex. You can have casual sex. You can have a
Right.
friends with benefits. You can do this. You can get on birth control.
Yeah.
Just practice safe sex. I mean, this has been indoctrinated. I was looking at New York University, Columbia University. There's all sort on their website. It's just promoting basically casual sex for young people. And you go to these Reddit pages where there's a lot of YouTube videos where I can't remember the channels, but we kind of talked about that where
Yeah.
a few guys are interviewing just women who randomly come on the show and they'll say things like body count doesn't matter, promiscuity
Mhm.
doesn't matter, So yeah, there's this interesting conundrum here, I think, going on. But and we sort of talked a lot about that. But what I would like to go with this conversation, Rich, is talk about maintaining desire in a long-term relationship. So assuming men have done the work on themselves, they've become more of an alpha dominant male. They're making a dent in the universe, as you say, with their work, with their profession, with their hobbies. They have male friends. They're doing cool things, and they want to secure a long-term relationship with a woman who they really click with and they vibe with. One of the things that I think is universal, and research shows this, is desire tends to drop in a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
So what are some tips about how to maintain that desire?
Yeah, desire for men and women drops differently, by the way. So Esther Perel talked about this in several of her books, but for men, it's kind of a slow trajectory, but it does go down. For women, it's more like a hockey stick. It's like it just sort of like goes down. It just goes down very quickly and just kind of goes off like that. It's tough. I'll tell guys very honestly, it's a lot more work to maintain a long-term relationship than what it is to date multiple women simultaneously in a non-monogamous fashion. And you lose a variety when you commit in an LTR, generally speaking, because women usually demand monogamy from men. Here's the thing. There's a stand-up comic. His name was Patrice O'Neill, and he did this bit on fishing boats. And I'm going to somewhat butcher the bit, but you'll understand it when I get to the end of it. He's talking about having a fishing boat and you go out there and you fish and you don't always keep the fish. You reel it in, you examine it, maybe you weigh it, you take a picture with it to let people know that you can catch fish, and then you let it go. And he says, at some point a fish is going to jump in your boat and be like, where do we stand? I kind of like you, I want to be here, sort of thing. And you might choose to keep that fish. um, and then at some point the fish will say something along the lines of, well, we've been together for a while, why do you still have a boat? Right.
Mm.
And the thing being is, for a woman to like you over a long-term basis, she has to know that you can catch fish and that you can smell like fish a little bit, right? Because a woman wants a man that other women want and other men want to be. So I think that one of the problems that guys run into, and this is a slippery slope, because I mean, you got to balance this somehow. So how do you, especially when we talk about things like monogamy, how do you commit to a woman and give her what she wants, abandon your sexual strategy, and then let her know somehow that you still have options?
It's
So
tough.
that's a slippery slope that you sort of have to navigate, because if she doesn't think that you have options, if other women aren't interested in you, like, she wants other women to be interested in you, but she doesn't want you to exercise those options, right? So it's very weird. Um, it's difficult, and if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't have a cut and dry, A plus B, sort of thing equals the answer. But it's being on some sort of pursuit, putting a dent in the universe, being competent, being influential, having a good social network, being able to make good money, being a good problem solver, being a good father, a good parent, a good husband, a boyfriend, whatever that happens to be. She has a very long list of things that you need to be for her to maintain genuine burning desire. There's an interesting study that I quoted in my book. I can't remember the title of it off the top of my head, but they were checking in with people that had been together an average of something like 8.5 years. And they were asking them whether or not they were in love, whether or not they disliked each other, whether or not they were in bliss. The other categories don't really matter, but the percentage of people that expressed that they were still both in love was less than 13%. The category of people that still expressed that they were in a state of bliss was something like less than 3%. So your chances of maintaining genuine burning desire over a long-term basis with a woman is very, very difficult. One of the problems too that guys have to resist as well is this process called betatization through 1,000 concessions, which again I talk about in the book. And essentially, it's her testing your competency, her testing your resolve as a man. I'll give you some examples. I'm brushing my teeth and I'm looking out the back window and I'm standing on the carpet, and then she starts nagging me about brushing my teeth standing over the carpet because I'm going to get toothpaste on the carpet. And then most guys would be like, okay. And then they'll just go to the bathroom and they'll do what she says, sort of thing. Whereas the competent, influential alpha man will just look at her, carry on with what he's doing, thinking in his head, be quiet, woman, and just, finish what he's doing and then go to the bathroom and spit it out, not making a mess because he's a adult male. And then it might go to, put your white socks in the white hamper and your black socks in the black hamper, sort of thing. And he complies with that. So each one of these little things, which women will generally say, well, that just seems like a good idea, Rich, like, why would that be a problem? It's a problem because if you put a stamp in his hand with a yes on it, and every time you ask for something, he goes, yes, 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 yes. It just stamps everything. Your attraction for him is going to go downhill. There's no two ways about it. It just will happen. You have to get comfortable with using the word no when you're in a long-term relationship. It doesn't require a further explanation. It's a statement, and that's it. It doesn't require an argument or a debate most of the time. And it's a balance, right? There's certain things that you're going to have to give her. There's certain things where you're just going to be brushing your teeth, look at her, and just carry on with what you're doing anyway, right?
Incredibly interesting. Do you think then, going back to the drop in desire and the bliss, the love after just 8 years, um, Are we meant then to have lifelong partners? I mean, you do see these cute videos of
Yeah.
93-year-olds, a man's waiting at the airport for his wife of 70 years or some such thing, right? Yeah, I mean, these are endearing. And I think all of us are hopelessly romantic at some level and resonate with those videos and that idea that we're going to find our lifelong partner. But the research really does show that this is infinitesimally small. The proportion of people that are really ecstatic about their partner after a long period of time. So what do we do, Rich? I mean, are we just monogamous with one woman for a couple of years, or she's monogamous with one man? Then
Yeah.
like, what do you think? This serial monogamy, is that a thing? Where do you?
I mean, monogamy as it's defined in the animal kingdom, like on all living species on the planet, is very rare. I think something less than 4 or 5% of living things on the planet are monogamous. And the definition of monogamy in the animal kingdom is like if you have two birds that are monogamous, one dies because it was out fishing and a shark got it. The other bird doesn't go to another bird. It just, that's it. Like there's no other mate for it. So the notion that we're monogamous, I think, is not true. I think that you can choose monogamy. We're more monogamish, where it's like one person at a time. Like that's a system that women seem to operate in. Sometimes it's one person at a time. Sometimes there's overlap, between people. I think for men, it's more of a optimized strategy of scattering seed far and wide. I was listening to this book the other day. It's called Sperm Wars. It's really, really interesting. And there's three categories of sperm that men ejaculate when we're having sex. There's egg getters, there's killer sperm, and there's blocker sperm. 2/3 of what we produce are designed to fight what's already in the reproductive tract of women. So I don't think that we've evolved to pair bond and be one man, one woman into perpetuity. That's the story that we've been told through Disney. That's what we've heard through religion. That we've heard it through culture and all that sort of stuff. But that story of the two 90-year-olds, lying under death beds, holding hands together, singing "Kumbaya" as they sort of pass away. That's more of a fairy tale than anything else out there.
Yeah. So then, as a guy like yourself, are you in a relationship right now?
Yeah, it's
Eh,
it's 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 something that comes with challenges. It's
yeah.
it's not an easy thing to manage.
Right. It is tough. Now, in your monogamous partners, do you live with them or do they have their own residence? Because that's
Yeah,
where I think desire goes down
I
when you
keep
live.
I keep separate residences for a whole bunch of reasons. So I live in Canada, and in Canada, you're considered common law after 2 years. You can put a cohabitation agreement in place. You can write contracts. uh, it's complex. They don't always work properly. The other thing which you alluded to earlier is that genuine burning desire does tend to wane much quicker when things are much more familiar, right? So most guys that go from a dating relationship to a live-in relationship will notice within months that her interest and her desire for you will start to go down. You'll also notice that the tests that she's going to issue for you, the competency tests, will start to increase. So the like the net benefit, I could understand maybe if you're not financially, squared away and you can barely afford the place that you live in, maybe combining finances might make sense. And I think that's an argument that a lot of people use. But I think that maintaining separate residences, if you want to have a good long-term relationship, like I say this all the time, you can love a woman and not live with her, right? And I think that's generally a better way to go, the way that society has sort of orchestrated the structures that we live in today.
Yeah, I think that's important. Um, I would love to get in the heads or hear why, from a woman's perspective, why desire changes over time. We have the research, but is it because they have betatized the man that they're with, or there's resentment? I mean, it would be really interesting to hear from the female's perspective why that changes, because I think it's important for women to recognize that for men to feel loved, they need to be desired. And if the desire goes down, men don't feel loved and appreciated. I mean, maybe that's just, my biased perspective, but I think this is
Yeah.
pretty universal. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think the main things that women have to do to keep a guy around are not that difficult.
Yeah.
It's be useful to his life, be respectful. So you can never disrespect a man. Women don't understand the damage that disrespecting a man does to the relationship. We lose interest and we start to look elsewhere when we start to pick up on cues that you don't respect us. And then the other thing is, of course, got to do with intimacy. And the best way to describe it is you need to give him the dirtiest, nastiest that you've never given to anybody else. You're only ever given to him. It's been said that you're going to give it away anyway, so why not give it to the guy that you want to be with? Those are really the main things that women have to do. That's just three things. Men, on the other hand, again, we have to be competent. We have to be on a purpose. We have to put a dent in the universe. We have to be masculine. We can't get fat. We have to be useful. We have to be able to make money. We have to solve problems. We have to be a good father. We have to be a good family member. We have to be a friend. We have to be alpha. We have to be beta. We have to be funny. We have to do a lot of things, right? So it's a bit of work when you take on this burden of performance of the man in a long-term relationship. Not that a woman's job's any easier, but there are different challenges for the sexes.
I think it's really important. A lot of women, I think, have the perception that a man's requirements are as long and extravagant as their own requirements. But as you just alluded to, we are actually pretty simple. We need to be respected, need to have good intimacy. We need to be, have common or reciprocity in terms of the effort that we each put into the relationship. But if those kind of three or four things are there, then most men would be willing, especially because we are more susceptible.
You'll take a bullet for her.
Yes. But yet women, the smallest little thing, then they're on the way out. You did this one time. I'm not sure if I can be with you because of that, or whatever it's pretty wild. So why are men so susceptible to this one-itis, and how come we can be, I know if you look at, infidelity, I mean, I think it's like 2-to-1, married men are much more likely to cheat than women. However,
well, you have to keep in mind that's reported. That's reported. And because women have to manage their reputation, they're not going to report the indiscretions that they go out on. The real source of good information on that data, I think, is from psychologists that sit in a private consult with men and women one-on-one. And they'll tell you that women cheat actually more than men when they're willing to, divulge information under the blanket of security. But when it comes to a survey or they're being asked in an interview, they'll generally deny it. So yeah, I mean, we both step out, but we step out for different reasons. You see, when women step out, they actually betray that relationship. When men step out, it's cheating. So I'll use an example. I get a lot of heat when I say this. So let's take the example of the guy, top shelf guy, loves his wife, his family, does all the events, the holidays, the summers, the Christmases, Thanksgivings, whatever it happens to be, always shows up. The bills are paid, everything's looked after. But because he's a successful guy, a hot young woman hits on him one time when he's at a conference and he makes a mistake and he goes and indulges. She finds out about it and then she divorces him. I'm of the opinion a woman like that is the asshole. Because when a man steps out, it's cheating. When a woman steps out, it's a betrayal. So when a woman steps out, she generally falls in love with the guy. She's generally looking to leave that guy. She's looking at him as a better option. We know this because when you ask guys that have been betrayed, they want to know, did you sleep with him? When a woman asks the guy, she wants to know, did you love her? Where did you go with her? Why did you take her to that restaurant that we go to with our family? Why did you take her to this place that you and I have been to, sort of thing? She's more concerned with the removal of resources and attention that benefit the family unit. He's more concerned with paternity because women have 100% assurance of paternity when she's pregnant. She knows that child is hers. Men have been duped throughout history, so they want to have the assurance of paternity. Not just that, like when a woman divorces a guy that makes a mistake like that, and he still genuinely loves his family and his kids, and he wants to provide and still show up for everything, but he can go out and have that exercise and come back and still forget about it because she's a bimbo. The thing is that women look at that from the lens that they view cheating, because when they cheat, it's a betrayal because they have a emotional connection to that person, generally speaking. So she thinks he's got an emotional connection to that young tart that just hit on him and he indulged. So it ruins the family. Then she exacts revenge. Let's take half his stuff. I'll alienate him from the kids. Then she starts bringing in new guys into the household, which, by the way, is the worst thing that you can do if you have small children, because that's where the vast majority of kids being violated come from, is a non-blood relative in the household, stepdad, stepbrother, stuff like that. So a lot of these things really aren't talked about openly. I'm the only one having these conversations, and when I do, I get judged and criticized for stating these facts. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but there's vast differences between the way men and women behave when they exercise other options,
Yeah, really
and the
interesting. And
motivations behind it too.
yeah, no, I think that's important. What came up for me during that last segment was male friends. It seems like women have a lot of male orbiters and are relatively naive about their intentions. And that
Yeah,
men can see through this and they can
yeah.
see the male orbiters have more intentions than just being the friend. What is your perspective or vantage point or tips for men who are seeking a long term relationship and they sense male orbiters or exes still in the picture, at least via text or on Instagram or whatever?
Yeah, so that's one of the areas when she comes to you and says, where do we stand, Mike? I want to do something on a long-term basis with you. I want to claim you, sort of thing. You got to look at how she holds herself out to public on social media, whether or not she's posting provocative photographs, whether or not she still behaves as a single woman, traveling around with her girlfriends for so and so's birthday to Vegas and stuff like that. Because we all know what happens in Vegas can stay in Vegas. Like it's a tagline for a reason. The whole thing with the male friends, I've also said this too, is that nobody sleeps with more girlfriends and wives than he's just a friend. Um, Sometimes she'll use he's just a friend as a guise to sort of dismiss the other candidate as potential competition. Sometimes it's just guys that want to friend zone their way into her pants. There's a lot of dudes out there that don't have the skills or the competency to attract, retain, and date women in the conventional sense that you and I might do it, where they just try to get in the friend zone and hope that one day that if they're enough of a good friend, that one day they'll be able to friend zone themselves into a relationship and they'll see them for the valuable guy that they are. And women don't see this. And it's real funny because I mean, if you were to say to them, well, you think he just wants to be friends with you, why don't we do this? Why don't we take your phone and text him right now and say, hey, I'm horny. Let's hook up and see what he says. The vast majority of guys will probably say yes to that immediately because that's why they're in the relationship. Guys don't generally get into the friend zone with unattractive women. They try to get in the friend zone or become friends with attractive women. And women, because they're oblivious to why they're there, or they dismiss the real reasons why they're there because they don't see it, they just carry on with it.
Well, what's interesting about that is a study came out, and I haven't read the study. I think it was in January of this year, maybe February of 2024, suggesting that about 60 to 70%, it could have been higher, of women have a plan B
Oh yeah.
in any given relationship. Did you dive into that or have you covered that?
Again, yeah, I have, and I talked about it in my book, and it's a reported study. And again, because women have to manage their reputation and because promiscuity is frowned upon and slut shaming still exists, they won't volunteer if they have a backup plan a lot of the time. So it's an admitted 50%. I believe that the number is considerably higher because if they admit that they have a backup plan, it makes them look bad. These are married women, by the way. These are not single women. These are not women that are dating. These are women that are in a committed long-term relationship that admit to having a backup plan. And it's usually something like an ex-boyfriend, a guy that sort of got away that she's still kind of in talk with and that chats with on DMs and social media or Instagram. Might even be a gay friend or something like that that, she's been attracted to that might be bi or something like that. So it can be any number of things, but it's important for women for their own survival to have a plan. And if plan A doesn't work out, then what does she got to do? She has to go find another plan A. It's better to have a plan A and a plan B simultaneously so that you've got options. So you can understand why they've got a plan B. I mean, you can't hate women for it. It's just in their nature.
Yeah. And it seems like it can be in our nature, although men do step out and women step out of relationships, but we are much more prone to fall in love with the one and have this one-itis.
One I just said.
What do you think? Where does that come from a evolutionary psychology
Yeah.
standpoint? Why are men prone to this?
I've read so much Evo Psych and I haven't found anything that really answers the question. I think the closest that I've come up with is the notion of war brides. Um, Throughout history, men have always been disposable. You go back 500 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, doesn't matter. You go back throughout history, there's been a lot of conflict in our species. And generally what ends up happening is the winners of that conflict have either killed off the men of fighting age or they'll take them into slavery, men and boys, or they'll take them into slavery. So they either get killed off or they get taken into slavery. The women, on the other hand, are preserved as war brides. And because of that, women have to accept and adopt their new conquerors, because if they didn't, it would spell certain doom for them. So you can fast forward to World War II, as a very good example. There's photographs of this online. You can find them of Dutch men shaving the heads of Dutch women in town squares after the war ended. And they did this because the Dutch women collaborated with the Nazis during the war because the men were either locked up, put in internment camps, killed, whatever, or had to go into hiding, go in the underground. And the women just, they adopted the Nazis and they started sleeping with them. So as a result of that, when the war ended, they said, let's take them out in the square and shame these women and shave their heads. And the photography is pretty astounding, but it's something that's gone throughout history. So to your question of one-itis, I think that women are innately built to move on faster. Whereas men, we were either killed or put into slavery. So we didn't have the opportunity to develop that, to be able to move on from heartbreak. Guys generally during a breakup suffer much, much more than women do. So much more. Women will never understand the sacrifices and the suffering that men go through in a heartbreak. I know that women suffer too, but not to the extent that I've seen men. Like I've seen men years down the road still pine for the one, like the one-itis. And the definition of one-itis is really an unhealthy attachment to one woman.
Mm. That is very interesting. All the background perspective on that. It seems that if you look at the suffering of men, men are much more likely to commit suicide after a breakup compared to women, statistically. Be
It's
depressed and anxious.
it's very, very easy for women to find another guy.
Yeah.
It's a lot more difficult for a guy to replace something that he was fond of very quickly. It's why I think guys have that one-itis because women have such an easy ability. Like women are always hit on by guys all the time, right? They have, like you said earlier, if you use a dating app, we'll get a couple matches a day. Women will get 40 or 50 in the same time frame. So they have a much larger pool of options that they can choose from.
Yeah. Incredibly fascinating. But it seems that some women get stuck on really bad men. I mean, that's
Yeah.
if maybe you have a friend, a female friend, she'll be hung up on this guy who treated her like shit, or she'll think about that relationship 5, 6 years ago, the guy who never bought her dinner, never split anything. They had to split all the bills and all this, but she's still emotionally connected sometimes to that. Why do you think women get hung up on men who are not good for them?
That's the bad boy. That's the asshole. They always like that guy. They always will like that guy. I mean, there's times in their life where they will avoid that guy. But the vast majority of women, especially younger women, they will go for that guy. There's women that are in their 30s or 40s that tend to avoid that guy, but there's that, 2 or 3 days in their cycle in the month where they're ovulating, where they're out at a nightclub, they're traveling, and yeah, he's an asshole, and I know that he just wants to use me, but that's okay because I want it to, right?
Mm,
Um, that guy, it's funny because there's this essay somewhere on the internet. I think it's called The Skittles Man.
mm.
And it portrays this guy who just gave a girl a bag of Skittles for Valentine's Day or something like that, or her birthday. And all the other guys are doing everything else. They're buying her flowers, they're taking her out for dinner, they're praising her, they're buying her cards, telling her she's beautiful. He's ignoring her, and all he does is he hands her a bag of Skittles, right? So the story of that guy exists, and women love that guy. It's there's a saying in England, you've got to be a little bit mean to keep her keen, which is interesting, but it's also true.
I mean, that was going to be my follow-up question as a tip for men, because we can generally be too nice. We can buy trips, we can pay for airplane tickets, hotels, buy gifts. Like we can do a
Yeah.
lot of these things. But again, there's that, tendency for some women to be hung up on the person who treated her like crap. So how much effort do we put into relationships if we do want to secure a relationship with, or we're prone to one-itis or whatever? I mean, you said, yeah, how do we reconcile that? You want to show effort and match her effort
Yeah.
and win her over, sort of, and do things for her that no one else has done. But at the same time, like you said, there is this tendency. So what do you offer for men in terms of tips?
You have to choose women that choose you. You cannot
Yeah.
give away your attention freely. You cannot take time out of your day to deal with women that aren't expressing a strong interest in you. You know when it's not there because she's going to cancel dates, she's going to be late, she's going to flake on you, she'll make up excuses. I had this guy call in on one of my podcasts, recently, last month or so, and he was telling me the story. He took out this girl on a date and he really liked her and he bought her dinner and they had a great time. 3, 4 dates in, something like that. And, he drops her off. And he noticed when he was leaving about 10 minutes down the road that her jacket's still in the back of the car. So being the gentleman that he was, he turned around and he drove back and He knocked on the door and wanted to bring the jacket back, but he found as he got to the house, there was another car in the driveway and it was another guy. He was
Well,
basically the Skittles man. So while she was in the bathroom at the restaurant, she was texting this guy saying, come over, I'm going to get dropped off at this time. So he's the beta male that's doing the nice guy stuff. And then she's getting her itch scratched later on that night after he's paid for dinner. And all he does is shows up with a bag of Skittles basically and takes care of that. So you don't want to, you don't want to be an asshole as a guy, generally speaking. I think most men understand that you want to be a gentleman, but at the same time, you don't want to be taken advantage of either. So you have to have, like, there's got to be somewhat of an asshole in you still. Um, it's a balance. You have to figure
yeah.
out where you want to be on the scale, but you'll know it when you have it because genuine burning desire is like taking a frying pan to the forehead. I wrote an entire chapter in my book on the topic.
Yeah, I would love to for folks to dive into that. Again, The Unplugged Alpha is the book. Rich, you have amazing tips and insights for people. Maybe we can finish up with some health stuff because I see a lot of men as they get older. In fact, there was a viral video just yesterday on one of these complex accounts on Instagram. And the lady was just on the street asking men how long they last. And some guys were like,
Mhm.
maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, whatever. And a 41-year-old said, oh, when I was younger, I could last 8 minutes. Now I can't get it up because I'm so old. I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
41 as well and definitely don't have those issues. Maintaining, quality of erections and hormones. Are you big into HRT? Where do you steer men for?
Yeah, yeah, I'm a bit of a biohacker. I don't talk about that stuff too much. So let's talk about, I guess, optimizing sex as you age. Nitric oxide is real important. So I think you get to the point where, if you're dating and you have a schedule and you know that you're going to get together, you might want to put like a system together that is implemented on the day where you're going to have like, your sexcapades, sort of thing. So nitric oxide, super important, L-arginine, L-citrulline. There's been studies that show that red Korean ginseng are also very helpful. I'm going to miss a few things here. Beets are great for nitric oxide production. You should definitely check your plaque score in your arteries. You can get a scan, which will tell you how much your arteries are obstructed. You should do stuff about that, lose weight, stop smoking, stop drinking alcohol, exercise more. Those are obviously useful. Cialis. What else can I say here?
Well, it seems like the,
There's,
the link with erectile dysfunction and diabetes is well recognized. So, I
yeah,
mean, if
there's
you
that
do have
too.
erectile dysfunction, losing body weight, improving
Yeah.
metabolic health, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason why you can't have a great intimate life well into your 50s and 60s. Like I'm a 70s kid. I
Mm,
got no troubles at all.
yeah.
You just have to take care of yourself. You have to be in the right mindset. A lot of it for some guys is mental too. Like
Mm.
they've been through the ringer. It might be through the divorce grinder. They might have been cheated on several times, betrayed by women, and they just never got over it. And they have anxiety or performance issues around that. It can be physical, it can be mental. It's usually more physical, like stuff that you can manage. Um, there's lots of stuff that you can do. There's a whole bunch of videos out there on it.
Yeah, it's wild. And what do you think is a healthy libido for a guy? I mean, if they're in a relationship or dating a girl,
Yeah.
sexual frequency. I see these things on the internet where on a Reddit post, some guy will say, I haven't had sex with my wife for a month. Is that normal? In a healthy relationship and the woman shows you, she has burning desire for you. What do you think is a good frequency to feel like, hey, this is going in the right direction?
That's an interesting question because you ask 20 different people, you get 20 different answers. I think if you're living together, it's going to be very different if you don't live together. And that's one of
Yeah.
the reasons why I don't want to live together with my gal. Because the frequency is going to go down, the intensity will go down. I know it does because I've lived with women before, and it always goes down over time because the familiarity is just there. There's got to be some competition anxiety. She has to have some thoughts of, well, what is he doing tonight? He's not with me, and I know his kids with his mom. So what could he possibly be doing? Not that you're doing anything. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. I don't care. But she has to have some anxiety about your whereabouts. That's when you'll get the genuine burning desire. That's when you'll get the impressive hanging from the chandelier fun stuff that we brag about to our mates in the locker room. So you have to manage it. I mean, go 2, 3 times a day if you want. It's
Yeah.
fun. Why
Right.
not?
Yeah, I think at least a couple times a week seems like
For sure. Yeah.
especially for working professionals and
I think the
uh,
definition of a sexist relationship is something like if it hasn't happened within about 60 days. I mean, if you're going more than a month without any kind of intimacy whatsoever, like nothing, then you're basically in a sexless type of relationship.
Yeah. And sadly, that's all too common.
Very common.
It seems that, in my relationship history, sexual satisfaction is directly tethered to relationship satisfaction. So if the
Mm.
intimacy is not there, the
Yeah.
strength of that relationship, you're roommates at that point.
Yeah. They say that sex is the glue that keeps a relationship together.
Yeah. And I think it's challenging again when you live with, your partner, your wife, whatever.
How do you keep
Uh,
that going?
Yeah. Well, but I think a lot of women now recognize that sex is really important for men. And so
Mm.
as long as they're making an effort to do things, to wear lingerie, to be spontaneous, then that can happen even with little kids around.
The notion of just using the word sex, I think, is a little bit shallow. So let me just
Yeah.
talk about that for a sec, because a lot of the times, you'll say to a woman, like, what do you think it is that I want? And they'll just be like, this, and they'll say sex. It's like, no, you don't want just sex as a guy. You want the nastiest, dirtiest, most intimate that she's never given to anybody else, that she only gives to you. That's the significance of genuine burning desire. And that's tough to maintain over the long-term basis because again, you're familiar. And guys get lazy in relationships. Women unknowingly put men through the process of betatization through 1,000 concessions by testing them and giving them these competency hoops to sort of jump through sort of thing. So it's a lot of work. And that's why you see such a, poor bliss rate reported amongst relationships being less than 4%. I mean, you take 100 people and only four of them are in a state of bliss. It's not a very winning instrument, is it?
Mm. Speaking of those instruments, what do you think about the aspect of marriage, the institution of marriage? Is that something that you would entertain again, Rich?
No, it's, uh, I'm obviously, divorced. I've got a chapter in my book. The title of the chapter is Why Smart Men Don't Marry Anymore. I'm not opposed to marriage. I'm not opposed to family formation and children. Obviously, I think it's great. But the problem with it today is it's not about what it was when it was introduced. Like the Batman origin story of marriage was not about love. It was not about religion or any of those things. It was about the acquisition of in-laws. It was about we didn't have schooling, medical care, law enforcement, access to nutrients. So we would blend families, and your big tough brothers-in-laws and my dad, who's a doctor, we would blend our families and we would offer solutions to one another. So it was about the acquisition of in-laws. Like that's what marriage was about. Today, now the state is the head of the household. So if you get married, they make decisions on what happens to the access of your own children, your own flesh and blood. Women can manipulate it with family law. Family law is hostile towards fathers. It's not written to protect or offer a balanced outcome. It's written to protect the parent that makes less money or spends more time with the kids, sorry, and or spends more time with the kids, which is often the mom. Because again, women are hypergamous, they marry across and up. They don't like to marry down often, they generally marry up. So when they want to untie the knot, it incentivizes them to get custody because they get more money, they get child support. They often alienate the father from the kids. They'll tell them stories about what an awful person he is, sort of thing. It's very, 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 very high risk and low reward for men. And it's high reward and low risk for women if they marry the right guy. So I'm fine with the notion of family formation or living on something that looks like marriage, but the state can stay the hell out of my life and not tell me what to do. If I'm going to have responsibility to a family, I want the authority that should come with it, which we had a long time ago. We now have responsibility to a family, but we do not have any responsibility, sorry, any authority because the state is the head of the household. Marriage contracts are running your life and can determine many, many things and throw monkey wrenches in them. I actually wrote a course called The Unplugged Alpha's Guide to Divorce on my website because it guides you through the process of untying the knot if you have to do that with the minimum of devastation, for the
Yeah.
individual doing it. And it works for men or women, but it's generally useful for men because if they're the breadwinners, then they have to be extremely careful about what can happen with family law.
It's pretty wild. I mean, I love how the zeitgeist in our culture is that men and women are equal, but when it comes to family law, men give a disproportionate amount of their income and resources to women, even if there's no children involved, which
Yeah.
I think is completely paradoxical. But we don't need to dive into that. So, okay, you secure a relationship with an amazing woman. That woman wants commitment from you, and you go and tell her everything that you just said in a more polite, you massage a little bit.
Mhm.
She's not going to take that very well, Rich.
No.
So how do you navigate this in a practical setting in the real world where a woman, she has this burning desire for you, she is in love with you, and so forth. What do you do to keep her around?
So there's a few conversations you can have. One of them that I would recommend is, I mean, if you have a great relationship, you love each other, the intimacy is there, there's genuine burning desire, and she's like, "Hey, Mike, where do we stand? Like, are we gonna just date and just live in separate households for the rest of our lives? Like, why can't we live together?" Well, you're the man. You have to set the frame of the relationship. You need to lead it. So fine, let's have that conversation. So you can say, well, let's take a look around you at everybody that that we know together because we've dated for a while. Your family, your brothers, sisters, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, everybody. How many of those people are in a state of bliss? How many of them still love each other the way that we love each other? And she's going to examine that, and she's going to have a hard time coming up with a very strong percentage. It's going to be a low percentage because we already know that after 8 years, less than 4% of people report being in a state of bliss. It's not going to be common that she's going to say, I have 30 people that I can think of right now, and all 30 of them are head over heels for each other. The vast majority of them, they make disparaging remarks. You see it during family meetings and Thanksgivings and Christmas and all. You see it, right? So you can use that as one example. The other statement that you could make is the notion of the state becoming the head of your household. And it's like, look, I've worked for all of this. I don't want to complicate it by writing legal agreements and cohabitation agreements and, agreement for this, that, and the other things sort of stuff. So let's just keep it simple. You maintain your residence, I maintain mine, and everything will be fine. I wouldn't tell a woman that you'd never live with her. In fact, I mean, my plan would be to get out of Canada, obviously, when my kid's an adult, and I'll probably live somewhere where the climate's warmer, the taxes are definitely lower for sure. I've got the ability to maneuver. I can run my business in that sort of sense or regard. I'd have no problem living with a woman in an environment where the government doesn't tell me what to do. And there's places in the world where the government doesn't tell you what to do, and family law can't be leveraged to screw you over. But you will lose some of the excitement and the intimacy, because the familiarity becomes more and more common. So that's the downside of it. But as you get older, maybe that's fine for you. You can always examine that later on. But if you're young and she wants to have kids and you want to have kids, the best way to do that is a two-parent household. The second best way to do that is two households with two parents together, obviously raising the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good point there, Rich. The family law in Canada, I mean, based upon what you tell me, is sounds a little bit absurd. I mean, it's pretty bad here in the U.S., but I think it's even worse in Canada. Hey.
Well, you've got certain states that work well for you. So you could move to Florida, Michigan, Tennessee, which assume default 50-50 custody. So if you've got kids, you don't have to fight over that. So there's no argument over child support or any of the arrangements that can come with the false DV, the alienation of the kids, stuff like that. California is another state, but California brings other problems because if you've been married for a certain period of time, it's lifelong alimony. So it's not that uncommon for a woman to be like talking to her girlfriends and she's like, oh, if you stay with them for another, year and a half, you can get alimony for the rest of your life. So she just puts off filing for divorce until then, sort of thing. So you got to be intentional about it. I'll tell guys to go where you're going to be treated better. So if there's states in the United States that treat fathers better, if you want to have a family, move there.
Yeah. What about conversations about prenuptial agreements? What do you say to men about that?
Some lawyers will say that they work. Some lawyers will say that they don't work. The understanding that I have is that they lose value over time. So if you've been married for 10 years and she had three of your kids, was a stay-at-home mom for the most part, she gave up her career in accounting, maybe, let's say, um, she's going to be asking for maintenance, alimony, child support, obviously.
Yeah.
And the agreement that you signed 10 years ago won't be that useful if the circumstances have changed, because that's what her lawyers will argue. So they're good in the short term, but in the long term, they don't have a lot of value. And at the end of the day, I mean, if you've been married for 20 years and she's raised your kids and you took care of it, like, you got to give her what's due to her.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's different. You have kids, you have a family, the mother gives up her career, then of course you should support her financially, and no one's arguing that. But I think if you were to get married later in life, like a second marriage or what have you, no kids involved, having someone walk in and then it doesn't work out or what have you, you lose 50%. I think that's really hard for men right now who are successful in their late 30s and 40s who are interested in securing a long-term relationship. But, having that conversation, it's hard to, with family law set up how it is, to
There
go
should
all
be an
in
end date
financially.
to it. There should be an end date to it, which is what the problem is, right? So I mean, if there's lifelong alimony, or if there's alimony for, I don't know, 15 years, like, is it really going to take you 15 years to find another job? Is it really going to take you that long to get on your feet or find another guy that, will take care of you? I think some of the stuff that's in family law is a little bit absurd. Like, for example, child support. It's not based on what the child needs. It's based on a percentage of your income plugged into tables. So if you make a lot of, like, it's why you see these guys, complaining online, like, I'm paying $25,000 a month in child support. And then the women will be like, well, he makes, $70,000 a month. So what's the big deal with 20,000? Well, the 20,000 doesn't go to the kids. The 20,000 goes to you, right? And you're already getting alimony, and you already got the house, and you already got the da 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 sort of thing. So it's like, if it costs $1,000 a month to run the extracurriculars and buy the clothes and feed the children, sort of thing, cover that. But why another, $19,000? Like, some of these numbers start to push into absurdity.
Yeah. Speaking of an absurd story, Tom Brady and Giselle filed for divorce, and linked up with her jujitsu
Jiu-jitsu,
instructor.
yeah.
That to me is crazy. I mean, how more alpha can you? I don't know Tom Brady, obviously, but multiple Super Bowl winner, 6'4", I think.
Mhm.
I mean, that's incredible to me. And what is your take on that?
There's a lot of very successful men out there that are weapons in their profession, whether it's an athlete, an entrepreneur, business icon, CEO, that are left by their wives for other men that are not as influential. Use the Tom Brady versus the jiu-jitsu instructor. There's this Brazilian soccer player I heard about the
Oh
other
yeah, I
day,
saw that story.
Kaká, something
Yep.
like that. She said that she left him because he was too nice. He was too perfect of a husband. He was boring, basically, is what she's saying. So even Tom Brady can bore a woman, and she can see her kid's jujitsu instructor as hot. It's actually kind of funny. It's not funny, but a very good friend of mine has a very similar type of situation. Successful entrepreneur. His wife started banging the dojo
Mm.
instructor. So you have to be careful. Like you do have to manage your woman in the relationship. You can't let her put herself in a position where she is going to be exposed to making bad decisions. Um, a bad decision is owning a nice car and parking it in a shitty neighborhood and leaving the keys in the seat and leaving it unlocked.
Mm.
Something bad is probably going to happen. That's like, if she comes to you and says, hey, Mike, me and the girls, we're going to go to Las Vegas on this weekend for such and such's birthday, so we'll be gone for 4 days. A woman that I'm in a relationship with won't even ask me that question. It won't even be presented because she knows the answer is no. Right. But lots of guys will just be like, yeah, we're modern and all that sort of stuff. Men and women are equal. Totally. Go have fun. You're an adult, sort of thing. The whole notion of frame in a long-term relationship is setting the frame and managing the frame in the long-term relationship. And you don't allow things to happen or opportunities to present themselves that could compromise the integrity of the love that you have for one another. Um, People make bad choices. And I think as men, we know what bad choices can be made by women when they put themselves in an environment where bad choices can be made. You just remove that from the equation.
Yeah,
And that's not being controlling or insecure. It's, I care about you and I don't want to compromise what we have.
that's beautiful. A buddy of mine was on a trip, and really successful guy, 6 feet tall, muscular, good looking, makes a lot of money, owns his own business, owns his home, and so forth. Goes on a trip to Latin America. He's a really adventurous guy. It was a 3 or 4, maybe a month long trip. And he would do these trips once a year, usually in January, comes back because unfortunately his father had passed away. And it comes back, and his girlfriend, well, they bought a house together, his woman, and they're really spiritual type, really nice people. She's pregnant from another man.
Mm.
So, I mean, that just with all these stories, Tom Brady, the soccer player, this, I'm like, that is, and women can say, well, this guy cheated on this person and all that, but
Yeah.
we're hearing more and more of these stories. I mean, it's just incredible to me.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, that is the ultimate betrayal. That is why men get jealous, because we do not have assurance of paternity. Women have 100% assurance that she's a mother. Men do not have assurance that they are the father. So we do get jealous for different reasons. And the notions of cuckoldry, which is what that is, it's basically her taking on the seed of another man and then telling you that it's yours. We don't have exact numbers on this, but from what I've seen, it's anywhere from 10 to 20% of children born to men today that think that the kids are theirs are not actually theirs because women have deceived them.
That's wild to me. The paternity testing statistics are
Yeah.
insane. Um,
It's nuts. There's a really interesting study that I came across where they were in, I think it was in Ireland or Wales, where they were doing a family tree with students in the classroom. And I can't remember what the exact questions were, but the end result was they discovered when they went through this exercise with the kids in the classroom, the way that they did it, that they found out that something like 25% of the kids were not biologically the person that thought was the father. So they had to stop doing this exercise with the classrooms because it was compromising. The other way that they also know this too, because again, this requires concealment. This requires being duplicitous for them to execute the process of cucking a man and letting him believe that he is the father when he's not. Um, they also come across this often at the same rate, somewhere between 10 and 20%, when children have to go to sick kids hospitals and they start doing DNA testing and blood tests, and then they test the parents to see where the gene came from. And they found in somewhere between 10 and 20% of the cases, the man that is providing the blood sample, who they believe to be the father, is in fact not the father.
mm,
And interestingly enough, a lot of these medical institutions, they won't even tell the father. They'll take the mother aside and they'll say, "Hey, we came across something that I don't know if he knows, but we're going to tell you because you know that you're the mother. He's not the father. So what do you want to do with this sort of thing?" So yeah, it's that would be devastating to any man.
absolutely. There was a viral picture going around, again, one of these social media accounts, a Caucasian couple celebrating their newborn baby, and the newborn was not Caucasian. And
Yeah,
the man just in the picture, the father was trying to force a smile, but you could see in his eyes that he had been cuckolded.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yep. Yeah, I think the quote on that was something like, mom says that her great 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 grandfather or something like that was half black or something like that.
mhm. Yeah,
But
you have your finger on the pulse on all these different studies and viral news stories. I love the reactions that you do.
yeah,
My favorite one was the lady who's an OnlyFans worker, and her child was sick at school, and she was complaining that the school had called her around 11 to pick up the child because the kid was sick, and
mhm,
that's her time when she does her OnlyFans performances.
right. Yeah, yeah. I
Yep.
mean, could you imagine dealing with that in your school? You'd never hear the end of it.
Right. That's insane. Rich Cooper, really appreciate you being on the show and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. I love your channel. I will put your link in the description below to your book over on Amazon, The Unplugged Alpha. I know you have courses as well. If folks want to do consults with you or connect with you, what's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, best place to go is centralized on my website. It's just richcooper.ca.